This episode is brought to you by San Pellegrino. A meal isn't just about what's on your plate. It's about what you bring to the table. San Pellegrino believes the table is where the best of life happens. That's what makes gathering around it so rich and rewarding. And with their unique sparkling natural mineral water, San Pellegrino brings its best so you can bring yours.
Now, Positively Ernie with Ernie Anastos, a New York TV legend and radio host with great positive stories and interviews.
Thanks, Ernie. You're the best.
And now, here's Ernie.
And welcome back to the show. We're happy to have a very special guest today. What can I say about her? I've known her a long time. I mean, she is everything. She is a celebrity chef. She's a TV host. She's an author, an entrepreneur. She's Lidia Bastianich. I'm so happy you're here. Give me your hands.
Oh, Ernie.
Oh, my goodness.
Nice to see you.
You know, this is like family. We've known each other for how many years? Don't even say it.
All right, we'll leave it at that.
My goodness.
Many years.
But you've been in the restaurant business, I mean, you know, like 50 years.
50 years.
Congratulations to you. That's great. What an honor that is. It says a lot about you.
Well, it takes stamina. You know what? I had a good time. It gave me a lot of satisfaction, and now the kids run it. Let them do it.
Yeah, Tanya and Joe do a great job.
Thank you.
You do so much. I have so many things to talk to you about. Okay, we're going to talk about your restaurants and your books, and I have one right here. But I want to talk about, you know, you as a human being. You came to America in 1958.
Correct.
From Italy, and you're Italian, Slavic. You're kind of, what did you call yourself?
A borderline case.
A borderline case. I love that. But you really have, you know, so much. And you came here to the United States, went to New Jersey, and then ended up in Astoria. I mean, a Greek town for the most part, right?
Yeah.
I want to hear about you were working for Christopher Walken's family bakery.
Absolutely.
Tell me about that.
It was great. You know, I was 12 years old, started school, but about 14, you know, being an immigrant, money always, you know, you wanted to help the family.
Sure.
So I went to look for a weekend job after school, and I was only 14.
Wow.
I lied. I told them I was 16. I was always a big girl. And Paul Walken, who was the father, had this German bakery right on Broadway and 30th Street.
Oh, yeah. No, it is.
Right there.
Sure.
We lived across the street. And he hired me. He hired me Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday.
And what were you doing?
Well, I began with folding the boxes, packaging, bringing out the cake, and then ultimately I ended up being a sales girl. But I always gravitated towards the back with the bakers. I loved
You loved going in the bakery?
Yes, sir.
Working with the workers?
Absolutely.
Well, that wasn't your first interest in food, though. You had an interest in food long before that, even before you were 14.
It somehow it seems that, I was sort of, way back. Now, I was born in Istria, which is part of Croatia now. And that was Italy after World War II. Italy lost the war, and that part was given to communist Yugoslavia. So we were under communism for the first years of my life. And I was very close to Grandma. She did all the food for the family, and I kind of helped her, a little runner. We had chickens, we had ducks, we had goats. I would milk the goats, the sort of the garden, harvest, and help her cook.
Wow.
And so I began with food on a very rudimentary level.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah, and it remained in me, all those beautiful flavors, fresh, the seasonality of the flavors. And then my parents sort of didn't want to continue to raise us in that circumstance.
Sure.
We escaped back into Italy. And in Italy, being refugees, we ended up in a refugee camp. For 2 years, we stayed in a refugee camp in Italy. And I was put in a nuns' school. And where do you think I ended up? In the kitchen? So
of course.
To help to supplement my schooling,
Wow.
I would help the nuns peel the potatoes, the apples, and whatever.
How
and
great.
so on. My story goes of life around food.
Lydia, let me ask you something, because, I can speak for myself and other people. When you start with something early, I started at 13 years old. I was down in the basement playing radio. I had a little radio station. To this day, right now, you and me, together, I'm still downstairs. I'm 13 years old.
There you go.
Do you feel the same way? Do you think about your grandmother and all these early experiences?
They all stay with you. You are sort of, as you grow in whatever industry you're passionate about, those first sort of installation of those flavors for me, of the smells, they stay with me. I always, when I cook, it comes to my memory. Oh, that's the flavor. That's what I want to do. It's there. It's there, Ernie.
And so that's the connection. See, I think that that's very important for a lot of young people who are listening to us right now, who are inspired and saying, this is Lidia Bastianich. I'd like to be like her. I wanted to talk about that a little bit because we were talking before we came into the studio, and you said when you're doing something good for people and they recognize it, it makes you want to do even more. Talk about that a little bit.
You know, 50 years in restaurants, 25 years on public television, 16 books. It's a question of evolving, developing yourself, being passionate about it, get that satisfaction, you know, because cooking for me and feeding people is very gratifying. And then to be recognized for that and acknowledged for that, and then to be given a platform like PBS, like the books, to continue to reach out to the people, you know, I turn around and said, is that me? Do they want to hear it from me? But I guess they do, and I love it.
Yes, they do. They do. I mean, and I'm sure that you hear from people of all ages, but particularly a lot of young people who are inspired by what you do, because food is a big business. Cooking is a huge. I mean, the books that you've written. This is your latest one, Lydia's From Our Family Table to Yours.
Right.
How many books have you written?
16
books.
15 cookbooks, and one of them is my biography, which I think you read.
The American Dream, right?
My American Dream.
My American Dream. I mean, that was a fabulous book, by the way. We'll get back to your cookbooks in a minute, but I want to talk about that. The title of that book is My American Dream, A Life of Love, Family, and Food. Why did you write it?
Well, you know, again, you're out there and people are connecting with you. They want to know more and more about you. And, you know, I always felt, okay, I am a chef, I cook, I'll teach them how to cook. But what was out there is they wanted to know more. And I says, well, I should tell them my story. They should know who Lidia really is. And I did, because mine is an interesting story, a story of after war situation, migrating, being a refugee, ultimately given this opportunity to come to America. And, you know, there's no place in the world.
No place like home here, America. You're
no
right.
place that gives you the opportunity like America. And I says, I got to tell them all that, how I feel about it. And so this way, they know Lidia and her life story, and then they have the Lidia cooking and recipe story.
Right, you got so many multifacets of your life. I want to talk a little bit about America. Okay, you were talking about, you know, this country of opportunity. We go through a lot of problems. You know, we have enough warts and difficulties, and we're trying to figure it out. I want to ask you, you've been here since '58. You've seen a lot of change. What's good about America, aside from the opportunity, and what do we need to do to make it better? Because right now we have a lot of problems.
You know, America, let me begin with America is the greatest place on earth. There's no better place than America. And what I see in America is, you know, what I saw, and I was amazed. You come to America, and, you know, in Europe, you're Italian, you speak Italian, but in America, there were so many different ethnicities, and they were all allowed to be who they are. As an ethnicity, you're allowed to speak your own language, you're allowed to sing your own song, you are allowed to have your own communities, cook your food, and then this patchwork of different ethnicity makes this greater whole, which is America. And I think that that's the strength of America, and we need to continue on that and respect. But, you know, what I think is missing a little bit.
Go ahead.
Civility.
Oh, that's my favorite subject. Civility.
Yes.
What's happened to it?
I don't know. You know, the respect that, you know, I think that maybe sometimes the young and whatever, too focused on our own gain and our own setting. We are, yes, we need to work on ourselves and our family, but we are also part of a bigger whole.
I agree.
And unless this bigger whole is wonderful and continues to flourish, we will all have problems. So let's respect America. Let's respect each other.
That's right.
Let's respect the different ethnicity, religious, and whatever, and let's live all together happy. Because in America, this is the way we need to do it.
Exactly. You know what? You're singing my song, Lidia, because I totally agree with you. And I think that, you know, patriotism, you know, is feeling that you belong to a country And you don't necessarily think about your own interests. You think about what's good for our country, what's good for our society. We've got to get back to that, Lydia. We have to start some campaigns where people begin to think more about respect one another. Exactly. I think, there's so much hatred and violence, and you don't have to even watch the news. People just talk about it. And it's depressing, and it gets people down. So this program, Positively Ernie, tries to lift the spirits. I am a big fan of finding solutions to problems. So many years I went on the air and said good evening and then told people why it wasn't, because all of the bad news. But now it's the opportunity to be able to say, okay, if we have an issue, if we have a problem, let's find an answer. Let's find a solution. How do you feel about that?
Absolutely positive. Let's work all together to go there. And, you do your part, and if everybody can do their part in whatever field they're in, then maybe we will reach someplace. Another thing, Ernie, that I think is really, really important is education of our young people.
Oh, sure.
I think that education is the solution to a lot of these problems that we have. So let's make sure that the youngsters that come here, that are here, have the proper education. And then from then on, we'll work with them because they'll be more civilized, more intelligent individuals.
Yes.
And they will handle America.
This episode is brought to you by Tic Tac. Summer tastes like Tic Tac. Tantalize your taste buds this sunny season with citrus adventure and orange. 2 everyday flavors that bring summer in every. Tic Tac Citrus Adventure is a yummy, vibrant medley of lemon, lime, and mandarin. And Tic Tac Orange is the perfect mix of tangy and sweet. Visit us at Tic Tac USA on social to refresh your summer with Tic Tac.
Learning through play starts with Lego Duplo. With Lego Duplo, toddlers can develop real-life skills while having fun with colorful bricks made just for them. Large, easy to grip, and safe to explore. When children express themselves with Lego Duplo, they build patience, problem-solving, and empathy. See your child learn perseverance and self-expression with everything they imagine and create. Visit lego.com/preschool to learn more.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
This episode is brought to you by Buick. Buick certified service technicians are factory trained to fit your vehicle with the tires specifically developed for it. And with our tire price match guarantee, you get the best fit for the best deal. Buick. Exceptional by design. Available on select eligible tire brands at participating dealers only. Offer ends 12/31/2025. Terms apply. See dealer for complete details. Visit Buick.com/service to learn more.
Well, you know what? I love what you're saying. And I know you have 2 beautiful children, Tanya and Joe, and you know what it's like to be a parent. You know what it's like to be a mother, and how important it is to be able to have that opportunity to shape that child from a very early age. So home is very important, but education in the schools, because they spend a lot of time there, we need to be able to focus more on what we teach our kids in school. As they learn civility and respect and honesty, it makes for a better society. And that's what we're all looking for, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We all want to live in peace. I mean, look at the situation.
Look at the world.
My mother was a teacher, and she always said that there's 3 things that form a child.
Okay.
It is the home, it is school, and it is the street. So, going out there and living, coexisting with other people also gives you a sense of direction. So let's make that street safe and good and
safe
positive.
and good. You're absolutely right. And travel, whether it's in our own country or other parts of the world, I think that's very important for a lot of young kids because they learn diversity. They learn about other cultures. They learn about history, and they learn to grow. I love quotations. And there's one that goes like this. Children don't know, so they want to learn. Adults think they know, and they don't want to learn.
Yes, I can relate to that.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because you reach a point and you say, I can't. You have to keep growing, Lydia.
Absolutely.
You have to keep expanding.
Ernie, you said, I'm on the border. I was born on the border.
Yes.
And I always hold that as a great privilege, because being on the border, now we were Italian but there was the Yugoslavian then, or Croatian or Slavic. There was the Austrian-Hungarian, so there was the German. So I was kind of grown almost understanding and speaking 3 languages, different cultures.
Yeah.
We lived together. We ate each other's food. And there was an understanding. We coexisted on that border. And so traveling, like you said, is so important.
It is.
Get to know other cultures.
Yeah.
Get to know what's important. And Ernie, there's no better way to get to know another culture than to sit at the table and eat their food with them.
Well, now you bring up another subject, okay, and that is the family unit. Trying to keep our families together. There are so many outside influences out there. We know what it is. Social media is a positive and a minus. A lot of, reality television, a lot of media, has a positive side to it. I will say that. But there's also a negative side that we have to watch for, how it impacts our families and our children. Okay, you would be the first one to talk about family, sitting at the table. Why is that so important? How can we get back to that?
Well, that's one of the things that I respond to with my books, with the television, and even here talking to you, is that you reach out and I sense that need out there from my from my viewers, the need to get back to the table, the need to get together. I think, industry and big industry and evolution and all of that sort of scattered us a little bit. But there's nothing more firmer, more stronger, more tying.
Yes.
Gives the kids more sort of sense of belonging than a family. Because in a family, yes, you can argue, yes, you can scream, yes, you can do that, but the family always has your back.
Oh, yeah.
There's always that security. And transgenerational, second, third generation. One of the things, Ernie, that kind of bothers me is the way grandparents are put aside. And, we only look ahead. But they're such a source of love, stability.
Absolutely.
So sticking with the family, getting together at the table. And when you eat, you take in nourishment as far as food, but you also take in the discussion, the sentiments, the affection that happens at the table.
It's an open forum. You're right about that. Going back to grandparents, when I grew up, back in New Hampshire, my grandfather was a Greek Orthodox priest, so he and my grandmother lived at home with us. And I always remember the meals, particularly on Sunday. Well, we would all gather, of course, but most of the time, and I think you're right about that, it's the center. That table is the center. Now, we had a little bit of that during COVID. I know it was a bad time for everybody, and it was a serious time. But you know what? A lot of families were forced to stay home. And that's where a lot of them renewed that feeling and the value and purpose of having a meal together at home. Made a big difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They understood the value of it, and they want ever more. And I think that's why I feel ever more this energy. I want to cook. I want to know. I want to make something for the family, feed them. Because when you cook, when you give somebody food, you want their well-being. You want to nurture them. So it's all positive. And ever more, they want to cook at home.
Absolutely.
That's great.
So that's become even more popular, right? People are taking classes, learning how to cook at home.
Absolutely. Look at all the television cooking shows. Now, some of them are valid, some of them are fun, some of them are whatever, but people are interested in food.
So let me ask you this: how do you stay fresh in terms of here's this latest book, okay? But there are so many recipes in here, so many wonderful recipes, and I love the pictures, by the way, because that really makes you hungry when you see them.
Thank you.
My God, what is this here? Lobster. Oh,
spaghetti with the lobster sauce.
Oh my God, spaghetti with lobster. Look at this. Is that amazing?
And it's easy to make.
See, many times people look at a picture like this and they say, "I don't think I can do that. It looks too complicated."
Absolutely.
Tell us why it's easy.
Because it's easy. The ingredients. There are not too many ingredients. Choosing the right ingredients and a simple technique. And, Italian cuisine is rather simple at its approach. And what I do, even though I'm a chef, restaurant for over 50 years, I make it simple. I break it down to the basics. And if you have good ingredients, simple execution, you will get a good dish.
So if I wanted to really cook, I dabble a little bit, right? But if I really wanted to try one of these recipes, I would just have to follow the instructions?
Go home, take that recipe, lobster and spaghetti.
Okay.
And
I want to try that.
Buy the ingredients, good ones, and cook and send me an email. Tell me
will. I'll tell you how
it
I'll
turned out.
send you a picture.
All right.
And I'll see everybody at the table how happy they are.
Okay.
You know, quality of food. We hear a lot about organic, you know, different types of food, farm to table. Why is that so important? Lydia?
Well, we get back to the sources because in the industry of food also everything evolves so fast. Big industry kind of, produce food at such a pace. And of course, they need all those super nutrients, chemicals or whatever. The nutritional value of our food really diminishes because if you put herbicides and whatever, that's poison. So they're reverting to organic. In a sense, organic is a word, but growing naturally. What the earth has to offer, seasonality, being close in proximity.
Sure.
If you have to travel, do we have to have raspberry in December from Peru? Can't we wait for raspberries in summer and enjoy them whether this is the question, because if you have a fruit that's going to travel a week, it needs to be grown differently. The cellulose in it needs to be sort of tougher so it doesn't disintegrate and so on. So let's go back to the simplicity, what nature had for us from the beginning, growing our food naturally, locally, and seasonally.
I like that. All good advice. I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions, okay? Sure. And you could just answer off the top of your head. What makes you smile?
Because, I don't know, I think there's a happiness that triggers. When I'm happy, it triggers, and I communicate that and get you smiling. And so
you have a ready smile. People don't like, some people, they have that smile that's really quick. And other people have to work at it. But you're right. Yours is a very quick smile, and it's contagious.
It is.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you smile. What makes you cry?
I think what makes me cry is a sensibility deep inside, or something that kind of loosens my kind of awareness. I don't know. You go back to your soul, the inner soul, and the sentiments guide your tear ducts or whatever. It's a way of showing. It's not really showing. It's automatic as far as I'm concerned in me. It's not that I want to cry. Just it happens.
But there's nothing wrong with crying. I had a very dear friend of mine. His name was Father John Couture. He ran the Christophers in New York City, nice Catholic organization, and he became a friend. I interviewed him several times when the popes would visit. We would have him on the set, and he would be giving us a little commentary. But I remember one time I sat with my friend, and he said to me, I said to him, actually, I said, you know what, Father John, I said, I can cry easily. And he said, yes. I said, sometimes it bothers me. He said, why? I said, because, I feel that, I'm too sensitive. If I'm watching maybe a movie or someone tells me a story, if I see a homeless person, I'm moved to cry. And I said, I feel a little uncomfortable because maybe is it a sign of weakness? What is it? He said, no. He said, I want you to think about the gift of tears. When you are able to cry, you are recognizing your divinity within. And, you have a soul that's alive, that cares, that's sensitive. You feel that way.
Absolutely. I think crying is absolutely acceptable. And it tells you about a person, at least to me. And I think that men especially feel sometimes they shouldn't
you feel
cry.
like I'm too weak.
Yeah. And yet it's a release. It's like a safety valve in a sense. I think it releases the tension and the emotions come out. And I think it's instead of keeping it inside, you open it up, you let it out, and you feel better.
I agree. And particularly now, we talk about the past and the future and the present. I think people are more open today. They're able to talk about whatever it happens to be, and I really support that. I'm going to ask you another question. If you were to give a newborn baby some advice that baby would read or look at years later in life, what advice would you give to a newborn?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, what advice would you give? That's a tough question.
It is. Yeah. I think, knowing they're newly born, really get to know your parents, your mother and father, then extend it over kind of almost like a ripple in the water. Get to know those ripples in your life and really connect to them on an emotional way. And that, I think, will give you strength to take on any new ripples that come in your life.
I love what you're talking about. Quickly tell me about the restaurants, okay? I know that Tanya and Joe are doing very well. You got Italy, you got all kinds of things going on. Give us an overview for people who are watching.
Well, after when COVID came, I decided, because we had to shut all the restaurants, you know that, and then to reopen, it was 50 years for me then, and I said to my children, you guys want to take over? I think I'll stay with the books, I'll do the television, I'm here for you, and they did. They took over. So we have Becco on West 46th Street.
Fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
Then Babbo, we have on Waverly Street.
Great.
Lupa on Thompson Street. Then we have Lydia's in Kansas City. And then, of course, the part of Italy, but also the kids now started a new concept. It's not a new concept. It's a business. I know you because your children also got into the food business.
Yeah, myself.
It's l'Antico Vinaio, and it is a
Vinaio.
Yes,
I like the way you say that.
Yeah, Antico Vinaio.
L'Antico Vinaio. Okay.
It's a
Tell me about
sandwich place that started in Florence, and it had the lines. This beautiful focaccia, big sandwiches with freshly cut, mortadella, prosciutto. With vegetable dressings and whatever. So the first one that they collaborated on is on 8th Avenue between 46th and 45th Street.
Okay.
And then they opened one on Sullivan Street. And then they opened one on 60th Street, Park Avenue. So this is the new challenge because, youngsters...
Well, they want to eat and go.
Yes.
But eat good food.
Yes.
So they're doing well?
They're doing well. There's lines out the door. They're opening in Vegas. They're opening in L.A.
Good for them. Now, tell me something. When I go, right, is there a signature sandwich, something that you'd say, you know what, if you go there, they're all good, but one in particular?
You know which one I like?
Yeah, which one?
L'Inferno.
L'Inferno?
L'Inferno.
Tell me about L'Inferno.
L'Inferno.
Yeah.
L'Inferno was great. I like a little spicy thing.
Okay.
So it has this kind of dressing that is made out of pepperoncino. And then it has roasted porchetta, the roasted porchetta, and some arugula. And I kind of like that one.
I'm going to order that, okay?
Okay.
I wish I had a little wine here for you, because usually at the end of your show, you have a little glass of wine and you toast everything. You have been a delight. I can't tell you how great you are. I'm sure people who are watching us, listening to us, because this goes to a lot of different platforms, and I'm sure they're saying, you know what, I always knew that Lidia Bastianich was special, but now I know how beautiful and wonderful she is.
Well, thank you,
Hold my
Ernie.
hands.
Always,
very close, very
always
close.
A pleasure.
A pleasure.
And, give me a call. I'm
I
available.
will. Congratulations, okay? Thanks for watching, everybody, and stay positive. See you next time.